Welcome to episode 2 of me vlogging my life. Today we're going to be talking about a lot of things. I analysed my previous episode and thought it was a bit sporadic, and today is going to be a bit sporadic as well, but I'm hopefully going to be giving more insights and information forward rather than just yapping about what I'm doing. This is going to be the core, my beliefs are going to be the core of how and why I'm going to start my business and figure out what I want to do in the future. So I recently watched a video on X or Twitter about how to speak brilliantly by Joseph Sarr. I'll put the link in the description as always to all resources mentioned, Notion notes, YouTube videos, X articles, whatever. He talks about clarity, inputs and outputs and texture of how you speak, which helps with your delivery and execution on your ideas in the grand scheme of the narrative that you're trying to paint, or the picture that you're trying to paint, the narrative that you're trying to tell. The core belief here when you're talking about anything and trying to become a better communicator like myself is understanding why you're doing it in your heart. So as I mentioned in episode 1, I'm doing this to better my communication skills because I get nervous or repeat things or have way too long pauses. I sometimes cut out the long pauses, but I'm going to try and keep the little pauses in these videos. Obviously not to bore you with little pauses, but I'm going to try and keep them in to give a more authentic tone and outlook on the episode. That's the main reason I'm doing this, because I believe that communication is a great skill that I need to learn in all realms of human endeavour. That can span through sales, friendships, communicating in relationships, anything whatsoever, garnering attention when you need it and then not when you don't need it. I think it's an incredibly useful skill, especially with body language as well, and expressing yourself in the right way. I think it could be a really useful skill that anybody in any part of the world with any role in their personal and career life should learn. A lot of things that people do, they say their words too quickly, and I'm a bad example of this. I sometimes say things too quickly, repeat points, and that's not the best if you're trying to give a clear and concise message, because you add in filler words. The amount of times that I've seen people who are supposed to represent companies or organisations, Zoom meetings, the amount of ums or likes they have, simply because they're trying to rush their speech, is diabolical in my opinion. And I think, as with Joseph Sarr, he brought it to my attention that it is easier to slow down your speech because it sounds more unnatural to keep saying like, etc. in your speech if you slow it down. This is a natural way to remove fillers. So I came up with the analogy that it's easier to spend your time selecting appropriate firewood before lighting the fire. The firewood being the components of your sentence before you say it. So we all think what we're basically going to say before we say the sentence, or at least I hope you should. That is easier to do than end up with a fire pit with half-rotted wood or bad wood that will burn badly, because then you'll have to spend time removing and rearranging the fire for maximum burning, i.e. clarity in your sentence. It's important also to be humble and have humility, because being grounded with your audience and matching their energy is incredibly important for communicating your message clearly. If you've got a fragile audience and you're very excited about your thoughts, they're going to feel a bit intimidated by your confidence, and then they're going to shut down and feel like a prey in a predator relationship, and that's not what you want. Now, believe it or not, clarity is a linear graph. It's not an exponential graph. The more frequency you have in your bad outputs, it drastically reduces the clarity. That's not true. It's a very linear graph. So if you decrease the amount of filler words that you add, you're going to see it very linearly. You're not going to see it with an exponential curve. Therefore, making small tweaks every time you open your mouth to say something will drastically increase it over the long run, because you'll recognise the patterns that you're making in your speech, and therefore you can fix them according to what your goal is of how you'd like to speak, how you'd like to communicate with others. The other factor was changing the inputs and outputs. So inputs is things like reading, listening to other people talk, understanding the way words work in sentences, and then outputs is the amount of time that you take to actually think through what you're saying. So if you read a lot of great literature, you listen to great speakers, and you read proper written articles, then that effort is wasted if you don't try and practice that in your own life. By reading and understanding, that will slightly seep into your communication, but without practicing it and trying to increase your lexicon and expel that through your own version of your reality, your own story, it's not really going to cement, because you need to create your own version of things, your own version to say things for it to make sense. Everybody's got a different life, and it comes from understanding your why and then telling that to others. You can read the full set of notes or watch the full 30-minute video. I'll leave it in the link in the description. It'll take you to a Notion page with my basic notes and the actual video if you want to watch that there. The reason I'm doing this, and this is my main goal at the moment, is because I want to create something great with my life. I don't know what that is yet. I've got a base idea, but building something concrete comes from taking small actions, and the actions that I'm taking at the moment aren't leading towards the greater purpose that I've got, because I haven't started a business, I haven't experienced entrepreneurship properly. So that's what I'm planning to do by recording these vlogs, practicing my articulation and my speech prep, and then applying that into a long-term project. Having the right social media algorithm as well, or the right people you surround yourself with, is incredibly important. Like, I don't log into Instagram. I probably visit that once a month for about an hour, just because there's often too much comparison. I rather use Twitter, where I can actually learn things about certain articles. Don't get me wrong, Instagram is great and there are some great creators on there, but I use it as a very minimal tool, and then use X more. YouTube is the greatest tool, I believe, personally, based on long-term videos, learning properly. You can really learn some great things on there and apply it into your own life. This is a bit of a random one, but talking about the MacBook Neo, I wanted to talk about how it has surprised so many people with the potential that you can get from such a relatively low-powered device. You know, people often think that they haven't got the best tech, or they can't start because of certain things. You know, I bought a $70 webcam just to record these videos. I could have recorded them on my phone. Sometimes the selfie camera on this is often better. You've seen that from other clips on my initial vlog. I could have used a 720p webcam. The quality of the image isn't the main focus of these videos. So why was I buying that? I was falling into the trap of thinking I needed more to get started. And the MacBook Neo was I found that to be a good psychological lesson, that you don't actually need much. You can get an iPhone chip with 8GB of RAM and edit 4K video. You don't need a lot of equipment to get started. I started this journey because I wanted to figure out what I could do as a human being with what I see myself as very privileged compared to the vast majority of the world, and I wanted to take that good education, good spawn point, if you like, as an advantage and utilise it the best I can. You know, I started outreaching small businesses in my local area, asking them what their biggest problem was, because, you know, you can see all the big industries and massive companies, and you can even just large companies that are doing over $1 million turnover a year. That's what I would classify as a large company. You can see that they've got multiple employees, and you can see that they can add all of these different things, and you can try and sell them services, you can try and sell them AI services. But I wanted to start off with the small businesses and realise why the small businesses are capped here and they're not growing. The in real life businesses, all the freelancers, why they can't get above that step. So I outreached some of them. I got like a 2% reply rate. I had AI analyse my email and figure out how I could make it shorter and more succinct to grab their attention and realise that I'm trying to help them, make them want to help an aspiring entrepreneur. And I got like a 2% conversion rate on those replies. Some of them gave great replies. I sent over 150 emails and got like 4 responses or something like that. It was crazy. But it's about trying. So I'm going to research, I'm going to find out what to do. There's that much hype online about Claude Code, starting agencies, AI, whatever. And I'm going to try and actually use the tools that I've got, not build something generic, and build something that's useful for other people. You know, I haven't got a team or anything to do this with, it's just me, and I am focusing on school as well. So I'm going to try and utilise the couple of hours I've got a day to research, let AI do the heavy lifting for me, like draft certain scripts so I can automate myself. I can just repeat and tweak certain processes in ideation stages and business stages, and then really focus on building something meaningful that's going to actually help people, because that's the main thing. Too many people build things that don't really help anybody, and that's why there's an oversaturation in the business market in the first place. You know, we only have one life, and the habits that we create are going to stick with us as humans. So that's why I'm making an effort to change them now, rather than regretting it when I'm 20 or 25, etc. I don't want to get to 40 and realise that I could have done things when I was 18, but I was too scared to do so. On May 30th last year, I got a DM from Hassan Haider, you may know him, and he was asking, you know, he's engaging with some of his followers and what would you like to see in his daily content or his Telegram channel. You can look him up if you want to, he's a pretty cool guy, and I explained my situation. At the time I was revising deep, you know, doing 10 hours of school a day, and he was saying, bro, that's a bit much. I agree that is a bit much, but that's what it takes for me to succeed and get the grades that I want. Then I let his advice of doing door-to-door sales slip, and that ties in with what I'm doing now. So I've wasted nearly an entire year. He was basically saying, get your confidence up, do door-to-door sales. Learn how to speak to people, learn how to converse, learn how to articulate yourself properly. And I ignored that advice despite him being a multi-millionaire. And I regret that deeply. That's why this summer, and the time that I've got on the evenings and the weekends, I'm not going to waste. That's why I'm starting this documentary series, because it's important that I try my best and get out of my comfort zone in order to get better at the skills I want to build. I also want to be really, really useful to whoever decides to watch, even if that's just a few people, even if that's nobody, and all of these videos don't get seen until 5 years' time. I want these videos to have value, somebody to get something from them, not just motivation, not just a little bit of knowledge that's not really going to sink in and they're going to forget about it in 2 hours' time, something that they can actually act upon. So once again, I've left another link in the description of an X article I read a couple of hours ago about neuroplasticity and how Claude AI can help you break down some of the current patterns that you have and build a better life based on your goals. The actions that you've got to repeat, I'll leave those that information in the description. You can have a look at that. But I suggest you go out there now, as this episode's about to end. I don't know how long it's going to be once edited. But I suggest you go out there, you try some things like I'm trying to, and make something of your life, no matter how old you are. You know, you're only going to be the youngest you are today. That's the truth. You're only going to get older. You're only going to get closer to death. That does sound a bit depressive, but that's the truth. And I'm here to tell the truth. So if you want to make something of your life, which I presume you do if you've watched this far in the video, go out there and try and break down any bad patterns, any bad behaviours, any narrow-minded, low-growth strategies that you've got, and try and do things. Just try and do anything. Try and be a polymath. Try and be, I don't know what it's called if you do all things, but try and specialise in a few things, actual important skills, and build upon them to make something that you're proud of. If you're not proud of what you've done already, you know, I am proud of some things, but I'm also not of others, and that's part of human existence. So if you enjoyed this video, you don't have to like and subscribe, but if you want to, you can. And thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in another episode soon. I'm going to try and do some more vlogging of me actually taking action, not just psychological insights, but we'll see how that goes. Thank you for watching, enjoy the rest of your day, and see you.